In this video I'm going to go through the current features in the OpenGD77 firmware. Today is 9th of December. So the first screen in the OpenGD77 after the firmware has been installed will be the Vfo screen. As you can see, there's transmit and receive frequencies in the Vfo, and at the moment I'm in Dmr mode, so it's showing the current talk group that's selected. On the top line, the mode is shown as Dmr, time slot is actually time slot 1 here, output power 1 watt, color code 1, and the battery is at 100%. So that's what's on the Dmr display. If I was to switch to FM display, which I'm going to do now, which is function star key. Okay, so we're in FM mode. Squelch is breaking slightly, there's some noise. Basically the same, except it's showing, at the moment it's showing FMN for narrowband FM, still 1 watt, still battery of 100%, still the same frequency. So the display between the FM and the Dmr, pretty much the same. We may change this FM narrowband display, because it's a little bit difficult to see. But it's difficult finding enough space to display all the information on the small display on the GD77. To change frequency, just the usual up and down step arrow keys. Change both the frequency of the transmit and receive if the receive frequency is the current selected frequency. To change to the transmit as the currently selected frequency, push the function key on the left hand side, which is the blue key, push the arrow key downwards, and that then selects the transmit frequency as the frequency you're going to change. Now if you change the transmit frequency, it's independent of the receive frequency. This allows you to set a split frequency, so I'm just going to kind of just change this. Now, so if that's set to say 075, so I put a 100 kHz shift, and then I push the function key then up to go back onto the receive frequency. If I then change the receive frequency, it maintains the split between the two. And this split can be cross-band. It doesn't just need to be, in this case, as in on UHF. It can be on VHF. One can be on VHF, the other can be on UHF. Doesn't make any difference. The only limitation is if you were to try and set a frequency which would cause the TX out to be out of bound, then it won't let you do that if you've got a split, or if you just actually try that on the receive frequency. Right, I'm just going to put the transmit frequency back to the same as the receive frequency. There's another way of doing this as well, but I'll just do it that way. Okay, so both the transmit and frequency are the same. If I was to enter a frequency that doesn't exist, like 123 megahertz, press the green button, it's not going to let you enter that frequency because it's not valid. It's not a valid frequency that's supported by the radio at all. Press the red button to exit out of that. So if I was to say 150 megahertz, then that is going to be accepted because it is a valid frequency supported by the hardware. It's not an amateur radio band, but the receiver will still work on those frequencies. So press that, and we're now receiving on 150 megahertz. You can now see we've got the signal strength meter here. So I am getting some signal on here. It will be just QRM. I don't think that's actually any real signal. It's just QRM. But I can now open up the Squelch by just on FM by pressing the left hand arrow key. So wind the Squelch down and turn the volume up, and yeah, it's just some QRM on 150 megahertz. If I wind the Squelch up, eventually, there we go, if I wind it up that hard, then that's now closed the Squelch. So I'm going to go back to the frequency I was on before, which is my hotspot frequency at the moment, so 439.175. Now you don't, sorry, that's 145. Okay, well that's good to demonstrate that. So if you miss enter a frequency, just press the back arrow, the left arrow, and then enter the correct frequency. Okay, 439.175. Now if the last two digits are just 00, you don't want to enter them, you don't need to, just press the green. There we go, means it's accepted that frequency. Now if you press the orange button in the Vfo menu, and the quick or context sensitive menu appears. Now this gives you a list of things you can do in the Vfo. You can switch VFOs because there are two VFOs, VFO A and VFO B. Now, so it's got a very easy way of switching between VFOs, because if you push the orange button, it displays VFO, current VFO is VFO A. If you then push the orange button again, only when it's got the VFO AB selected, it will switch to the other VFO and then leave the quick menu. So I'm just going to push the orange key again. Okay, so we can see we're now on 439.200, so I'm going to push it again. It'll show them on VFO B, push it again, back to 439.175. So it's actually very quick now to switch between VFO A and VFO B. So we go VFO B, VFO A. At the moment, we don't have a display to say which VFO you're on, whether you're on A or B. It doesn't really kind of, make any difference. The two VFOs are totally independent of each other. So you could, for example, have this VFO in DMR mode. Okay, so I'm switched to DMR by doing the function plus star key in this case. So that VFO is in DMR mode, and I'll switch to VFO B, and that's in FM mode on a different frequency, and then back to VFO A. Okay, so on DMR mode, same thing in terms of receive and transmit frequency, but there are some other things that you can control in DMR mode that you can't control in FM because they're not specific to FM. The first thing is the time slot. Okay, so this is currently set to time slot 1. Now pressing the star key in DMR mode just changes the time slot. Okay, so it's time slot 2 or time slot 1. Now I've not actually mentioned the power, but this will apply to the FM. There's now 7 or 8 power settings. The power you can select is anywhere between 5 watts and 250 milliwatts. So pressing the function key on the side, then the right hand arrow, that increases the power, so that takes us up to 5 watts in 1 watt steps, and then go back down to 1 watt, and you can go below 1 watt, 750 milliwatts, 500 milliwatts and 250 milliwatts. Now the actual power output you're going to get on 1 watt, 5 watts or 2 watts, 3 watts, 4 watts or 250 milliwatts is dependent upon the calibration, power calibration in the radio being correct. And a lot of the radios, the power calibration isn't correct, so you're not going to get the correct power. So the only way you're going to get 1 watt on VHF or UHF is to actually go and use the calibration system in the CPS and actually calibrate your own radio, because otherwise the chances are it's not going to be calibrated. The power settings below 1 watt are not going to be super accurate, because the calibration table in the flash memory in the radio has only got 2 calibration points. It's only got a calibration point for 1 watt and a calibration point for 5 watts. Now in between 1 watt and 5 watt, the drive level required for the interim points like 1, 2, 3, 4 watts are fairly straight lines, so it doesn't work too badly. It's accurate to about 0.2 of a watt, 0.25 of a watt, something like that generally. Below 1 watt there is no calibration point for anything below 1 watt, so it'll vary a little bit between radios. You might find your 250 milliwatt setting, even if you calibrate the 1 watt, might be 200 milliwatts, not 250 milliwatts. But at the moment there's not a lot I can do about that really, unless we add some more calibration points into the table, which is going to require changes to the whole calibration system, and probably just not necessary at the moment. On DMR it's showing the color code all the time, color code 1. Now because this isn't something you're going to need to change very often, then the color code you can't just change easily by any keypad settings. If you want to change the color code on here, what you need to do is you need to go into the channel details screen. Now both VFO and A and VFO B are actually just a special type of channel. They're really the same as a channel. And if you look in the CPS, you'll find if you go into the VFO or A and B in the CPS and double click on them, it just opens up the standard channel screen. So they are just channels. So consequently, if you want to change the color code, you can get to the channel details screen in the menus, which is fairly long-winded, but you can get to it that way. Or the simple way to do it is to press function on the side plus the green key, and we're now into the channel details for that particular channel, which is showing a lot of things about the channel, including we're in DMR, it's color code 1, time slot 1, Obviously the CTCSS not applicable. Receive and transmit frequencies, bandwidth not applicable. Step, that's for the VFO, step up and down. Timeout timer 180. Zone skip is to do with the scanning, so it doesn't really apply to the VFO. All skip actually doesn't really apply to the VFO either. Should probably disable those. And the RX group, which I'll come to later, but that's DMR mark. Now most of these settings you can change in here, so we can change the RX group to DMR mark. The actual whole RX group itself, the function in it and of the RX group is actually it's now become just a talk group list rather than anything specifically to do with receiving. Anyway, back to looking at the color code. So if I want to change the color code, I can just use the right and left hand arrows and I can change the color code. I can also change the time slot here, but I can do that from the front panel. Now I'm not going to change it at the moment because everything around here is on color code 1, so I'm just going to push the red key to exit back out. Okay, now I think the final thing to say about this here is the talk group display, which is talk group 505. Now in the DMR channels, the RX group list is used as just a talk group list, not just for receiving. In fact, we don't filter on the RX group list at all. We may do in the future, but for ham radio use, just filtering on the talk group list isn't necessarily what most people want to do most of the time. So when you assign a list of talk groups to the talk group list or RX group list and then assign that to a channel, by pressing the right hand left hand arrow you can cycle through all of the talk groups in that list. So these are all my talk groups actually for the local DMR mark system. In the newer versions of the CPS, you're also able to assign a Timeslot Override to each of these talk groups. So you'll see in this case I've got Timeslot talk group 505, which is on Timeslot 2. All these other talk groups, the first load of them up to 3808, are all on Timeslot 2. However, 3809 is a Timeslot 1 talk group. So in the contact for that talk group, you'll see this is now changed to TS1, and that has come through because this contact has an override assigned to the channel or the VFO overall talk group to say this is a talk group, a Timeslot 1 talk group. Same thing with talk group 5. Now talk group 9 in this case, I don't have a talk group override on it, which means when it's switched to that talk group 9, it's not changed, it's whatever it was before. And this will lead to kind of some slightly odd behavior in that if I'm on here talk group 505 on Timeslot 2, and then if I press the left arrow to go to Timeslot to the previous talk group, which is talk group 9, you'll see this is displaying as Timeslot 2. Whereas if I was to go the other way, go to a talk group 5, go to that contact, see it set the transceiver to talk group. Sorry, to time slot. Here we go.
VK2XLJ.
Okay, right. That shows a quite interesting feature on this as well. If you get an incoming call on a talk group which isn't the talk group you're on, you get them to show you that it's not going to transmit back on that talk group. You get it shown in black, inverse video here. Now, under those circumstances, I probably can't demonstrate that now because nobody's going to be talking, but if you push the blue function key on the side, it will switch the transceiver to transmit on the talk group of the incoming signal. So this gives you total control of which talk group you want to transmit on. If you want to stay on the same talk group, even though somebody else comes on the repeater on another talk group, that's fine, just transmit. You will stay on the same talk group. However, if you want to reply to that person on the talk group that they've come through onto the repeater, while it's still displaying that, press the blue key on the side and it will switch you over to that. In addition to it switching the talk group, there is now a feature which I'm going to show you by pressing the quick menu on the VFO, is the Dmr filtering. Now currently it's filtering on time slots, so it will only be receiving on the time slot that I've currently selected. However, if I disable the filtering on the DMR, we've still got incoming signals actually. Okay, so the time slot indication is now showing that this is the transceiver is on time slot 1. Now this signal is on talk group 505, but that will actually, I'm going through my hotspot, so it will just appear to be on time slot 1. However, if I was on a repeater, if I was actually to listen to this guy on the repeater, I'm actually going to switch onto the repeater here. Okay, so I'm going to go through the local repeater, and maybe the same guy will come through on the local repeater. So if I was to switch to time slot 1, we might be lucky and somebody comes through. So if I'm on time slot 1 here, which you can see because sorry, the display is showing time slot 1, but this is now displayed in inverse video. This means that though the radio is set to transmit on time slot 1, it's going to be receiving on both time slot 1 and time slot 2. So if you get a signal on either of those two, it'll lock on and stay on that until 10 seconds after that station is finished and the whole repeater is cleared down and the stopped transmitting. So so that's that feature. Oh, the other feature that this is now showing is that there's a box being drawn around the talk group. Now this means that you've manually entered a different talk group rather than the talk group that was initially assigned to the channel via the RX group list. If I was to press the right and left hand buttons, that will go away because it's removed it. But if I was to manually enter another talk group, let's say, I don't know, talk group 9990, so that's parrot test. So if I do 9990, enter, okay, the transceiver will be now operating on talk group 9990, and to show that this is a manual override on what would be the normal talk group for that channel, then it draws the box around it. Now if I was to manually enter a number which I've already got as a digital contact, let's say we'll just say talk group 5, then that displays the box around because the name that I've allocated to the contact for TG5 is actually called TG5. But if, let's say, I have a named contact like the OpenGD77 talk group, which is 98977. Okay, so I'm going to enter that. It'll actually pick up that in my contacts list that 98977 is the OpenGD77 contact, so it still draws the box around that. Okay, so that is the basic functionality for the OpenGD77. Now there is loads more functionality, but I think this is probably enough for the basic operation video, and I'll need to do some separate videos that explain things like the last heard list, the scanning, the channel scanning, etc. But that'll have to wait for another day.